Hey everyone, welcome to Save or Death. I'm really excited to jump on this video because I wanted to start this series for a while called Subclass Sunday. I have a lot of opinions, whether they're good or bad, about certain subclasses in 5th edition. So in this case, I'm actually starting with the Drunken Master because I have some very strong opinions about it. Spoiler alert, personally, I think it's really underwhelming, but that's why I'm making this video, and I want to actually come up with some solutions for it. Towards the end of this video, we're going to add some things that's going to make it a bit more unique from a role-playing perspective, ways that it could be more effective in combat, maybe some utility stuff, who knows. So, and also towards the end, I'm going to be ranking it under certain scores like offense, defense, support, utility, things like that. I'm not saying that's where, the monk class, as a whole is lacking. I'm just saying this is something that the subclass doesn't add a lot of to the base class, because monk has a ton of utility in and of itself. They have slow fall, they have immunity to certain diseases, they age slower, they eventually get proficiency in all saving throws. Like, that's a lot of utility. But what else does the subclass add on top of that? So those are some of the questions I want to answer today. All right, we're going to start with the bonus proficiencies that the Drunken Monk gets. So basically, when you start at 3rd level, you get proficiency in the performance skill if you don't have it already. It says something about the martial arts technique mixes combat training with the precision of a dancer and the antics of a jester. You also gain proficiency with the brewer supplies if you don't have it already. Getting performance did seem a bit weird. I mean, the first couple sentences, they're saying that the Drunken Master kind of fighting style is more of like a dance or like an entertainment aspect, or it's kind of like, an art, like an art form almost. And then in the very last sentence, they kind of throw in there, oh yeah, by the way, you like to drink, with the brewer supplies. So I feel like there's kind of a disconnect there. I think it is interesting that they are saying like, hey, you don't have to be drunk to be a Drunken Master. It could be kind of more of like a fighting form than like I wouldn't say like a way of life, but you don't have to be drunk to be able to perform these type of features. But I think, again, I'm going to come up with solutions to some of these things and give people some more options for RP and then other stuff towards the end of this. Okay, and Drunken Technique says at 3rd level, you learn how to twist and turn quickly as part of your flurry of blows. Whenever you use flurry of blows, you gain the benefit of the disengage action, and your walking speed increases by 10 until the end of your current turn. This is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not bad. It's very good at getting yourself out of a bad situation. Typically, I played monk a couple times. I've watched my friends play monks tons of times across many campaigns and games. Typically, when you play a monk, you're trying to engage a very important target, like a caster or a ranged character that can do a lot of damage or cast some very nasty spells, and you just want to lock them down, stun them, stay on top of them. They can't get away. That's the whole reason why they have increased movement. They can step at the wind to get on top of, that said enemy. Very rarely are you trying to actually like get away from them. So I guess it is kind of nice if you do get surprised, or if you do find yourself getting focused on and you're surrounded by 3, 4, 5 enemies, you can get away. But it's a good feature, but again, it doesn't add a lot to it. Plus, you have to expend a flurry of blows, so it's not something you get innately. You have to spend a key point to do flurry of blows, and I might do another video about the monk base class, but I really think flurry of blows is, I wouldn't necessarily say a waste, but I would much rather save my key points for stunning strikes than to push an extra 8 damage with an extra punch, because you get an extra punch anyway as a bonus action. I'd rather save those points to basically completely lock out an enemy character for an entire turn than push an extra 8 damage, at least in my opinion. Okay, so now looking at the Tipsy Sway. Starting at 6th level, you can move in sudden, swaying ways. I thought that was kind of a weird way of saying it. You gain the following benefits. Leap to your feet. When you're prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of your movement rather than half your speed. It's not bad. It really plays into the whole like hypermobility aspect that it seems like this class is going for, that you can disengage, you get extra movement speed, you only spend 5 feet of movement to stand up. Plays a little bit into like the athlete feat that you only need to spend 5 movement. And I actually like this ability. It's very simple. It's one of those things that adds a bit of flavor to the class. For the next one, redirect attack. When a creature misses you with a melee roll, you can spend 1 key point as a reaction to cause that attack to hit one other creature of your choice other than the attacker that you can see within 5 feet of you. So basically, if you have a creature attack you in melee range, can't be range, it's in melee range, it misses you, you can kind of drunkenly guide its attack to one of its, one of your enemies, its allies, and hit it in the face. And I think it's good, and it's kind of hilarious that you can have an ogre attack you, and then you can redirect its attack to hit one of the goblins next to it and basically take it out of the fight, because there's no way a goblin is surviving an ogre attack like that. So The only thing I don't like about this is it almost completely contrasts the ability you get at level 3, which is that you can disengage and get away from enemies. But now this ability only works if you're next to enemies. So it's like, are we trying to get away from the bad guys, or are we trying to stay on top of the bad guys and try and make use of this redirect attack? I mean, I guess it's nice that you could have either option if you need to get in or out or stay in the thick of it. But typically, based on the way you play, you're going to use one of these way more than the other. And it almost feels like a waste that the other one isn't going to be used as often. So, and in my opinion, I think it's going to be the disengage one. You're going to be wanting to get on top of that caster, stun him. They're going to have an ally that's going to help you. They're going to attack you. You're going to redirect it at the enemy. And that caster's just going to take more damage while they're stunned. So I like that part of it. I just don't think the disengage is going to be used that much unless you're purposely trying to put yourself in dangerous situations. All right, and the next one called Drunkard's Luck. Starting at 11th level, you always seem to get lucky, bounce at the right moment. When you make an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw and have disadvantage on the roll, you can expend 2 key points to cancel the disadvantage for that roll. I mean, it makes sense. Like, I understand the aspect, but how often are you going to have disadvantage on, like, a saving throw? It's very few and far between. A disadvantage on attack roll, that happens quite often. And same thing with certain ability checks. You can have disadvantage on certain ability checks and stuff, but I really feel like spending a whole 2 key points to basically, A, you have to be at disadvantage for whatever reason, and 2, you have to spend a good, I mean, at 11th level, I mean, you're spending a fifth of your resources just to cancel out that one roll. Now, if it's a really important saving throw that you need to complete, or you might die or take a ton of hit points, then sure, use it. But then again, you also have to be at disadvantage, which seems very rare. I just feel like this ability is good, but it's super, super, super situational. It's something that's rarely ever going to happen. And again, I'm going to have a solution for some of these things towards the end here as we move on. All right, last but certainly not least, Intoxicated Frenzy. At 17th level, you gain the ability to make an overwhelming number of attacks. I don't know why I started laughing. I think it's just hilarious that I'm just visualizing it. Overwhelming a number of attacks against a group of enemies. When you use your Flurry of Blows, you can make up to 3 additional attacks with it, up to a total of 5 Flurry of Blows attacks. The verbiage is kind of weird on this. Provided that each Flurry of Blows attacks a different target this turn. I think this ability is amazing. As I said before, there wasn't a whole lot of things that made this subclass stand out or made it really unique. There's a reason why I really like the Kensei monk. Heck, I even like some of the 4 elements and like some of the other monks too, where it's like, even though they're not that good, at least there's some flavor that makes it different enough from the other subclasses. This is just like, hey, you can disengage and like run fast and get to your feet quickly. Like, that's really a lot of this class provides, and that's pretty much it. But this thing where it's like you can make an overwhelming number of attacks, I love that a lot. But it's just so unfortunate that you don't get it till 17th level, which, at least in my opinion, this is one of my solutions. A bit of a spoiler, but I might mix it up here towards the end. Is like, this is an ability I think it should get at like level 11 or 6. Like, these are the type of abilities that's really going to make it stand out. That it's like, hey, maybe I don't pick Open Hand Monk. That Intoxicated Frenzy ability is like insane. You know, I'm not going to be able to push enemies back, whatever, but I can just make a lot of attacks. And of course, it's only as effective as there are a number of enemies. I mean, if there's only 2 bad guys, you can only hit them twice. But if there's a lot of enemies, hey, that's when the Drunken Master shines, right? And that's what's going to make it stand out. So, okay, and with finally all that being said, here's the criteria I'm going to basically be rating the subclass as. And this is all tentative. I might change this over the next few weeks of my next Subclass Sundays. But I came up with role-playing, offense, defense, utility, support, synergy, and resources. So it seems like a lot, but it's not really. And again, when I give these ratings out, it's based on the subclass and not the class as a whole. So if I give something a low rating, it's just because I think that the subclass doesn't add a lot to the base class in these specific aspects. So in this case, I think role-playing, I gave it a 3. I mean, it's a classic, you know, Drunken Monk, Jackie Chan. If you've seen any of the movies or any of like the kind of the drunken fighting techniques, like it's fun, it's amazing, it's entertaining, which is why they gave you a performance skill. But really all you have to go off of is the brewer supplies and the kind of the performance skill. I mean, you can kind of weave it in there a little bit with the disengage and the standing up and the prone stuff, but it puts a lot of the RP onus like on the player, which is completely fine. Some people are way better at that than others. But with the amount of stubs you have to play with, like even the Drunkard's Luck, like that would be awesome if it happened more frequently than probably once every like 15 sessions. At least, maybe if not 15 sessions, but it's not going to happen something that frequently. The next one is offense. So other than the Intoxicated Frenzy, there's really no way to push extra damage. There's a little bit there with redirect attack, but again, that's super situational. You have to spend a key point. But the best, I think this is an amazing capstone ability, at least for the subclass, but you get it so late in the game, which is why I gave it a 2. It gives you a lot of ways to get into combat, out of combat, get on your feet, things like that, but there's no way to actually definitive way to push extra damage by yourself. For defense, I gave it a 4. I mean, being able to disengage, get yourself out of combat or out of a bad position, get yourself up from a prone position, being able to save yourself from a disadvantage saving throw. These are all actually pretty good things, and it adds a lot to the base class, at least in my opinion. You can already do the, the patient defense, which means that you're taking the dodge action, so everything has disadvantage with you. But, I mean, it gives you a lot of defense, but again, I think the base monk class already has a decent amount of defense with the high AC, eventually have proficiency in all saving throws, that it just doesn't add a ton, but I think it's enough that you can distinctly separate yourself from the other subclasses. As for utility, I mainly graded utility based off of things you can do out of combat or things that are not damage related. So out of combat, I mean, you can do some brewer supply stuff, but that's not going to aid your allies in any way. I mainly just gave it a 2 because, at least for utility-wise, I kind of worked in a little bit of the disengage stuff. The redirect attack, I think, is kind of like a utility thing. I mean, you can kind of weave it in with offense and defense, which is why it's really hard to categorize these things, because some of these abilities layer into other categories as well. So I gave it a 2 there, because you're just not doing a lot out of combat, and even in combat, your options for helping out your allies or making things more difficult for your enemies is a bit limited, at least as in contrast to the base class. Support, I gave it a 1. There's really no way you're helping out with your allies other than just the stunning strike, which is, don't get me wrong, an amazing ability, but that's the base monk class, not the subclass. So this gives your allies no help. You're just doing everything on your own. You're standing up by yourself. You're not helping your allies in any way. It's all by yourself. And at least for synergy and resources, so the synergy and resources, I basically broke this down as, are you getting additional ways to expend your resources? Are you getting additional resources? Are your resources getting better? So monk uses mostly key points. It uses martial die, so it's not really finding a way to push extra martial die or push extra damage. You have more ways to spend your key points, like with your reaction to redirect an attack. You do have the Drunken technique that when you do use a flurry of blows, you can disengage. So it's making better use of a resource we're going to use anyway. Now you can disengage and get extra movement speed, which is why I gave it a 2. It wasn't atrocious, but there's just some other subclasses and there's other classes in general that just hey, this is a resource you get, and then when you pick this subclass, you just get way more of those resources, or you just get way more options when it comes to expending that certain resource, whether helping yourself, helping your allies, whatever it is. So I gave it a 2, at least in that aspect. All right, now with all that being done, I'm not the type of person that likes to just complain and just point out an issue and not come up with a solution. So that's what I'm going to do here. And first, I'm going to start off with the bonus proficiency. I thought it was so weird that you get performance and brewer supplies. I think the brewer supplies is completely fine. Leave that. But the performance skill is really threw me off, because let's say you were to do go up to a king or do whatever, and you're trying to practice some of your drunken monk technique. You're doing a back bend into a front flip into the splits, and you're also drinking at the same time, and you're doing all these crazy maneuvers, and it's all right, is that acrobatics or performance? And is really doing all these flips and all these cool things, is that really a test of charisma? That's just the performance skills just in general, that it is a bit weird. But I think just adding the fact that you gain proficiency in performance or acrobatics, that's it. Let the person decide whether they're more of a charisma-based performer and everything is just kind of an act and they're not really drunk, or I could just pick up acrobatics and hey, I am actually drinking a lot and I do use my brewer supplies, and everything I'm doing is a test of my acrobatics and not so much of my sheer charisma. So that'd be my first solution. Okay, and for this one, Drunken technique, I think it's perfectly fine as it is. We don't need to touch it, but there is nothing in place that makes it harder for the Drunken monk to get hit. One thing I did see in the movies is that as Jackie Chan was moving around, it was really hard for the bad guys to hit him because he was just moving in really uncontrolled movements. I think what we need to do is add a line of text that says at 11th level. So I kind of want to make sure it basically happens right when tier 3 hits for Adventures League, and it's also kind of a good hit point for the whole Drunkard's Luck thing. At 11th level, when you use the Flurry of Blows, you have the dodge action to the beginning of your next turn. So basically, when you use that Flurry of Blows, you can disengage from everyone else, and on top of that, you actually have the dodge action to the beginning of your next turn. So, and I think that also works really well with redirect attack, because now that everyone has disadvantage on you, they're more likely to miss you, and now you can wait for that big guy to miss his attack on you. Now you can redirect it to one of his allies, and I think you can actually role play that, and it's also just more combat effective. I mean, already the Drunken technique is already kind of stepping on the toes of the step of the wind, pun intended, but why not just kind of put some more of those abilities together, so now you're benefiting from more things using the Flurry of Blows. And I think that's what's going to help increase those things like the resource management, and that you can get more out of the key points that you are using, since you're not pushing damage anyway. All right, and for the next one, Drunkard's Luck. Again, I said this one was super, super situational. I didn't want to change it too much and just completely flip the whole thing on its head, because I had a few different ideas. But at least for this one, I think the simplest fix for this, which I think might actually encourage more role playing, is that instead of spending 2 key points just to cancel the disadvantage for that roll, you spend 2 key points to actually have advantage instead. So if you are poisoned, let's say a creature casts an ability on you that you're poisoned. I mean, you're a drunken master, you're used to being poisoned. So I think if anything, part of the luck aspect is like, I usually am at a disadvantage. Now I'm actually at an advantage. So it actually might encourage people to actually get drunk before a fight. And they might have a disadvantage on attacks, but now they can flip it, spend some key points, that's going to be a short fight, and actually have advantage instead. So that's my quick fix, and I think, again, even though it's still super, super situational, it's going to make it that much better, and it actually might come up with some really creative ideas for people to be drunk when they're using an ability check, because that gives them advantage all of a sudden, or now they have advantage on attack rolls. It's going to make it happen more frequently and be that much better when it does happen. All right, and for the last one, Intoxicated Frenzy, I'm not touching this. This ability is amazing. Literally the only change I would do, I really wanted to just put this at the level 6 spot, but then we got to move Tipsy Sway up to 11, and Tipsy Sway does not really feel like a level 11 ability. Then we got to move Drunkard's Luck up, so all I did was, at least in this case, is just move Intoxicated Frenzy to 11 and Drunkard's Luck at 17. Yeah, the capstone ability of Drunkard's Luck at 17 isn't amazing, but so are a lot of like subclass, quote unquote capstones aren't that great, but like just being able to get that Intoxicated Frenzy right at level 11, right when tier 3 starts, a decent amount of games tend to go that way, but like hardly any games go to 17. And like, because Drunkard Luck happens so frequently, I don't think you're that upset that you're not going to get it. But something like Intoxicated Frenzy, I would really, really want to get that sooner rather than later. And it's those types of abilities that make this subclass stand out from the other ones. And honestly, if Intoxicated Frenzy was at level 11, I would have given the attack, or like the attack rating on this, probably a 3 or a 4, just because it's like, hey, it's soon enough in the campaign that you can actually take advantage of it. Level 6 might be a bit too soon, and now you have to start playing with things like maybe you can only do a certain number of attacks equal to like your Dex mod or maybe your Wisdom mod, who knows, but you would have to play for that a little bit. But that's just like my quick and easy fix. And I think that just these small little changes is going to add more damage, more role playing, and more utility to the Drunken Monk, like at the end of the day. All right, I really hope you guys enjoyed my very first Subclass Sunday video. Let me know what you guys think about the recommendations I made about the subclass to make it a little bit better, some of the categories I use, my rankings, what's the next subclass you guys want me to cover. If you guys could put all that stuff in the comments down below, I would really appreciate it. I want to get some feedback and some discussion going on down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, with the way my new Drunkard's Luck works, you have advantage. Starting at 6th level, you can... Okay, and now with all that finally being covered, we're going to get to the criteria. I'm going to basically be further... Good.